disadvantages with technical means of rehabilitation. And the speakers are Oleksiy Krasnoschokov, head of NGO Pidmoha.info, Olexandr Morozov, advisor at the Ukrainian Center of Afghanistan Awareness and Rehabilitation, and Konstantyn Rykhlevskiy, director of Bio private enterprise. Good afternoon, dear guests. I am Oleksiy Krasnoschokov, head of the board of the Pidmoha.info NGO. We'll talk about the problems of making prosthetics, about nuances. We'll hear representatives of the business and also people who use these means. On the 14th of August, there was a press conference dedicated to the technical regulations. There was a lot said about how technical regulations are killing the branch, how they negatively influence the process of making prostheses for disabled. We today want to know whether this is so, whether the branch has actually stopped after the technical regulations were introduced. First of all, there was Resolution 753 adopted in October 2013. Then on the 15th of January this year, a law was adopted on technical regulations and assessment of correspondence. All technical regulations have gone through all the legislative procedures, and how they were launched in Ukraine. This is a European experience. They were just translated from English into Ukrainian, the same model as is used by everyone in Europe. Of course, there were complications with the translation, but they were overcome. So what was there and what has become after the introduction of technical regulations? The branch is responsible for 825 million hryvnia a year. It includes also wheelchairs and other rehabilitation means for disabled. Earlier, we didn't have a control on the safety of products because they were looking at just one or two wheelchairs from a batch, and no one checked the rest of the components that were there in this batch. And technical regulations, first of all, are needed to make the produce safe. They are not about quality, they are about safety, and this is also European experience. If earlier something has broken in my prosthetics, I had to prove through a court that this was that the manufacturer was to blame. Now I can go to the supervising body and they will protect my rights. So this is the sort of protection for people with disadvantages about the safety. Also, we had some branch certification earlier, and it cost 5 to 10 million a year for the budget, and this played a role in increasing the prices. Now, up to 90% of manufacturers' goods are under the first level of safety, so this is now a free procedure. Also, earlier we had just one center that issued certificates of safety. And today, even if a prosthetics company wants to get an independent assessment, then we have 9 bodies that are responsible for the assessment of quality and safety of the produce. So the corruption component was thrown away and the market was open, and the state regulatory service sent letters to the Minister for Social Policy and the Prime Minister, and technical regulations are one of the preconditions for the agreement of association agreement. So they said that as of the 1st of July, the prosthetics branch has stopped. We have here representatives of two private enterprises who would tell you that they continue to work after the 1st of July, but I am more concerned with the issue why they have raised the limit for foreign prosthetics against the background of cutting down the profitability of state and private enterprises twofold, with just one movement of the pen. And we want to raise the profitability of the prices from local manufacturers, and I am surprised that we are seemingly moving along the way of European integration. We adopt regulations, we adopt other normative initiatives at the level of the Cabinet of Ministers, and they exist for a month or so, and then we come back to how it was. For instance, on the 5th of August, they delayed the implementation of technical regulations until the 1st of January, and you know, representatives from the president or the ministry come and thank each other for having stopped the deregulation and the alleged collapse of the prosthetics branch. And all this happens under the management of the Ministry of Social Policy. And I think that people who are manufacturing prosthetics will talk more about this, and those who use those means in orthopedic prosthetics. I give the floor to Olexandr Morozov, who is advisor at the Ukrainian Center of Afghanistan Veterans Rehabilitation.
Good afternoon. Morozov Alexander Semyonovich, the advisor to the Ukrainian Center of Rehabilitation of Afghanistan Veterans. I've been working for 25 years in this sector. I started from creating this organization because young guys who came back from Afghanistan, they needed modern functional prostheses, but not those which were manufactured by the state-owned plants. What I would like to say on the issue that we are discussing, unfortunately, during the last 12 years, if you take into account that there was time when the companies were re-equipped, they were trying to develop their own spare parts, but in the last 12 years this sector is like a milking cow which is so corrupt, and unfortunately we see that even the public organizations of disabled people participate in that. Those people who work in the ministries and who are to protect the interests of disabled people, the cabinet of ministry, the cabinet of ministers, the administration of the president and law enforcement bodies, they're trying to substitute laws by orders. And this is very cynical. And those people who are protecting corruption schemes are very cynical. We several times mentioned Order 37. The public organizations approved that. It was approved by the Ministry of Justice, and the result, the active patients cannot receive prostheses because they have to be either Paralympic or ATO participants. Sad fact, in Europe this is not the case. Unfortunately, this is the case here. 215 order on attestation of the companies. That is where the requirements to the producers are established by the ministry according to the legislation, but these requirements are absurd, and if the ministry does not like the company, then this company will not receive the state order or will not provide services to disabled people. And the next one, 756 order. There was the ruling of the court that it does not correspond to the legislation, but they are still acting. Mr. Shevchenko is trying to say that this is not the norm, but this is the stating order. I don't understand what it is, but nevertheless they are forcing the companies to use such spare parts which the leaders of the ministry want them to use, or others want them to use. Also, the Commission on Prices. If a disabled person needs a product, we have documents about that. The Commission of the ministry states, yes, the disabled person needs that, but we will not pay because that's too much money. So the question is, if the organization violates the law, then send these documents to law enforcement bodies. But no one has the right to deprive the disabled person of his or her rights. What Mr. Krasnoschokov said, that law enforcement bodies are not paying attention to what's happening in the Ministry of Social Policy. Well, we believe that maybe one day the law enforcement bodies will start executing their functions. There's a draft law now, amendments to the law on rehabilitation. The Ministry of Social Policy again wants to control the quality of the products which are produced by the company. That's nonsense, because only the company can control the quality of the products. There's the document from the Ministry of Economy which provides explanations about that, but nevertheless the documents signed by the First Deputy Shevchenko were sent for approval to introduce amendments to the law on rehabilitation. As to technical regulation 753, it did not stop the sector, the operation of the sector. The state companies, the private companies continue to operate. They artificially tried to stop, and they say that now these companies are to be taxed, but they are not mentioning resolution number 410 and the tax code, but thanks God the companies are still operating. The technical regulations allowed to reduce the bureaucratic chain where there are two subjects, the producer and the consumer. And they have to define the quality of the product, functionality, and the producer is fully responsible to the disabled person. The quality control or the functionality control is to be done by the state controlling service. Other functions are with the Ministry of Social Policy. No one has initiated transferring any functions from the Ministry of Social Policy to the Ministry of Public Health. Order on pricing or on prices for products. I don't know why do they have these civil servants in the Ministry of Social Policy if the company is 5 or 9% profitable only. I believe that what they were thinking about was how to save the money in the budget. Maybe this is wrong guess, and I'm sorry. But then 5%, if we did 18% from 5% or 18% from 9%, that means that the company cannot physically develop. And as Oleksiy said, we increase millions. basically say that the prosthesis could be bought abroad because there are modern technologies there. I believe that that is all done in order to preserve or create new corruption schemes. Last year there was an attempt to liquidate small companies which are making prostheses. They survived. And now, if you believe that they should be 5 or 9% profitable, then the state companies can be made bankrupt and they could be privatized at a residual value. Or another option, and you understand the corruption, another option. They will say that the company is almost bankrupt and they will require money from the budget. Let's save this industry. But I would like the president who's talking about the European vector of development of Ukraine and the civil servants who he hires or the prime minister hires. We would like them to compare their steps, their actions with what the person wants, the disabled person wants, but not like it was stated at the press conference. Let's not hurry up with deregulation. Let's not hurry up with approving European norms. Then why did we need this revolution? We had that all under Yanukovych. Unfortunately, well, but we would like the law enforcement bodies to start working, but now we received the document from the prosecutor's office that they don't see any crime in the corruption actions, even though dozens of millions of money are going out of the budget, and that's the money that would be very beneficial for the disabled. Now the floor is given to Rykhlevskiy, Konstantyn. Rykhlevskiy.
Good afternoon. I'm the director of a private enterprise bureau. I've been working in this branch since 1999. I have created and developed my enterprise. I learned at a German workshop in London, so I do know the economy of German enterprises and compare it to what's been going on in this country for 20 years. From the very start, the cost effectiveness of when we started was about 30%, and no one was very much interested. The similar enterprises in Germany, where the cost effectiveness is 30 to 50%, are successful everywhere in the world. They are working on new technologies and implementing them in manufacture. And we used to have 30% of cost effectiveness, then it came down to 18, and this year they want to kill it altogether and make it 9%. I pay 4% of tax from my profit. How can we survive in such circumstances when we have to pay 4% of the 5% of profitability? We have to pay 4% as a tax. Well, this is not the cost effectiveness or profitability that will make masters and enterprises develop. So there is no vector of development at all. Besides, the change in conditions of work in the middle of the year does not help create normal situation when you can work calmly. And they were scaring us with the seminar and saying that because of technical regulations the enterprise will stop, you will have to invest a lot, you will have to change the contracts, but I think that technical regulations have just obliged the enterprises to be responsible for the quality of their produce. Earlier, there was a technical department of Prosthesis enterprise that was allegedly monitoring the situation. Now the patient can go to the body of technical control that will protect their interests. Previously, they used to agree those problematic moments within the enterprise, or they endeared the person to themselves with redoing something, remaking. So I think that the introduction of technical regulation has not affected the enterprise, the branch at all. But of course, we are working at the moment. It's not known how it will be in the future. Besides, the development of the firm is limited by the limitation of the sum of contract. They sign the contract which is strictly regulated. For instance, at my small enterprise, the sum in 2009 was 400,000, and it is still the same, and no proposals to raise this sum have not been looked into. No, this is not true. Excuse me, but first we have statements from speakers, and then we have questions. And this limitation of the sum of the contract kills the competitive field. It happens so that then a person goes not to the firm which has best opportunities and possibilities, but there where they got more subsidy from the budget. In this way, they get rid of petty manufacturers who would be better at servicing the patient, of taking care of the patient. And you know, they create the system where the quantity of the manufacture will go on. There are disabled people who should be given a opportunity to get what they want and what they need, because instead of the stipulated 3 years, they use these 5, 6, or 7 years, and only then they go to the plant, to the factory. If it can serve you longer, why should you go to officials and clerks that would decide the matter instead of you? It is easier to get just one product and make its lifetime longer. So, you know, coming out from, proceeding from my own experience, I'd say that if there were disabled people holding responsible jobs at the ministry, I think that we wouldn't have seen the change in circumstances. People used to know themselves what should be done in order to save the, and then there will be a patient who will be speaking after me, and I think that he will tell you everything himself.
Good afternoon. Korotchenko Olexandr. Olexandr Korotchenko. I've been disabled for more than 22 years, and all these 22 years I've been working because our pension does not allow us to live, to maintain the family. I came to work to Mr. Morozov, Alexander. I came to Alexandr Morozov, and he helped me walk. And now I really can walk. In my office, no one knows that I work on prosthesis. They asking, why are you limping? I say, just I have some ache in the leg. So I had to receive spare parts for my prosthesis. a couple of years ago. Then something was prohibited and I had to go to the court. We won the court. I received the spare parts. And this year I again have to receive a new prosthesis, and they again write that I cannot have it. Why cannot I have it? Am I not a man? Do I have to use old prosthesis? I don't know. Just try to drive Mercedes and then drive Zaporozhets. But again, if I switch to old ones, I will again start falling down. I believe that I have the right to get better prosthesis. This is it. Thank you. Even here there are barriers. I am Yelena Chinka. Good afternoon. I am a sportsman of the national team of Ukraine on sport dances and wheelchairs. Also, I am the leader of the dancing studio for children. I have a very active position in life. I spend a lot of time walking more than 12 hours a day. Now I have a walking stick. I can walk without a walking stick beautifully, but because we still have barriers, it's difficult to move around, especially in the streets. I would like to talk about such people as myself. I would like to talk about quality of prosthesis. That unfortunately we do not have don't always have an opportunity to get prosthesis from where you want. It all depends on what is the financing provided to a certain shop. In the past I had the chance to get 2 pairs of prosthesis. I was doing it twice in 4 years. Now I can receive only a pair of prosthesis in 4.5 years. I'm a very active person, and that is why I have many problems. Just imagine, my both legs are in silicone, and that means that there are plenty of bacteria. It's interesting to check what's happening with the leg in a year or 2. You're trying to disinfect because you keep them clean, but several years pass, and if you do not replace this, not the whole joint, the whole knee, but the receiver of the leg, the patient itself is faced with such problems. And talking about quality, it would be good if money were allocated and if there were some state programs so that we don't need to go somewhere far away, so that we just come and show how I walk beautifully, because they made me prosthesis over there, but let's do it here. Let's organize the program so that we can train new professionals here, craftsmen, who will be developing this industry, and maybe we will be offering some new things to the world. And I've mentioned that already. On behalf of such people as myself, I believe if I lack financing, I cannot walk on an active joint. I don't have Mercedes or Toyota yet. It's when I walk fast, sometimes I just fall because I move actively and the joint is not adjusted to do that. Of course, I want to work having a good prosthesis, but the financing which is allocated by the state, it's not enough for an active person, believe me. Individually, they need to look at the patient. One person will need this type of prosthesis because this person is less active. Another one needs more active because the person is more active. This should be individual approach to every person, patient. You can put on golden prosthesis, but you will not be able to walk. First thing is the hands of a craftsman. That is the handmade art. That is the art of the hand, of hands. The more they make by hand, the more expensive it becomes. If you do something wrong, even if it is golden, it may cost a lot of money, but you will not be able to walk. And of course, the will, the spirit of a person to learn how to walk well. And if we lack financing, maybe there should be the individual account of the disabled person so that the person can find some additional money plus to the money allocated by the state so that the prosthesis is more functional, more mobile. And definitely, let us listen to what people with disability think. And let's invite them into discussion to reach some improvement. Because people with disabilities, they know themselves what is needed. They know what should be done. We are always ready to get involved into some cooperation. We are ready to provide advice, but let's approach that very individually.
And there was a meeting with the department in winter, and I went there when there were representatives of all our enterprises. There were very few people with disabilities. And as the department said, we gathered here in favor of people with disabilities. Let's talk about them. And I raised my hand and said, I'm a person about whom you say you care. Let's talk about the quality and about the development of the branch. And from this, we'll go to other stages. Go, take, and bring here. No, let's do it here in a quality way. And let's raise our high class and remarkable prosthetics workers and makers here. I'd like to invite all our guests to the stage, because now we will have questions, and I stress this should be questions, not comments from journalists. Okay, then there will be a question from the Ukrainian Crisis Media Center. Very interesting presentation, but why haven't you invited a representative of the state structure? Someone from the Ministry of Public Health, for instance. Well, we did invite people from the Ministry of Economy and the Regulatory Service, the Ministry of Economy as initiators of the introduction of technical regulations, and the Regulatory Service as those who assessed the actions of the Ministry of Social Policy. And we are tired of inviting the Ministry of Social Policy because we tried to establish dialogue since last year, but the first Deputy Minister or the Deputy Minister do not hear us. And by the way, the Ministry of Public Health, they also do not agree with the delay of the implementation of the regulations. But despite the fact that major stakeholders have not agreed to do this, they still managed to lobby the delay in introduction of technical regulations. Okay, I stress that it should not be a comment, but a question to the speakers. Do you have a question? Could you tell us, please, where do you see in the resolution that the regulation is cancelled? No, it is not cancelled, it is delayed until the 1st of January. Please don't say what you're saying. Only serial production is delayed, and this is wheelchairs, and there are regulations for all the other manufactured goods. Only for wheelchairs and rehabilitation means this does not relate to, for instance, mammal prosthetics. Okay, but how they are different from components? And of course there's a discussion about this. I have specific documents which I have already published that were adopted at the Cabinet of Ministers. We are within the zone of someone's interests. We like wheelchairs, and people decided to retain the scheme that was in action before this, and they decided to cut off cost effectiveness and profitability from other things. And this all is covered by the Cabinet of Ministers and the Ministry of Social Policy. If there are no other questions, then we are going to round off. But of course you can sum up something or continue the discussion off record. I'd like to say that in principle I agree with the position of Oleksiy Krasnoschokov. This is not important whether the entire regulation is cancelled or just part of it. If we measure the concrete steps and actions of clerks and officials from the Cabinet of Ministers, then we see very clearly corruption schemes where they leave something intact and change something, and they still retain control. It is very, very sad. We would like those who hold power to finally look into their own questions. Today, people are being sent to Italy for prosthetics, but why? If Ukrainian prosthetics is accessible now, both for hands and legs and arms, this is much more costly. Yes, 3 fighters were sent to Italy because they will be given limbs there, and soon the Limbo company will enter the Ukrainian market. So in principle, in this case, I think the decision is justified because we still don't have experienced professionals in Ukraine, so that's why the guys were sent abroad. Also, we do not have an adequate system of rehabilitation, which is the major problem. Yes, a person can be given a prosthetics, but how can you teach them to walk? For instance, our guys come back from the school of walking in Austria, and they do walk. If we had some things like this here, this would be better. Of course, it is better to develop our domestic manufacturer, not to send people abroad. The more so that we will soon have the technology. But we just take the pen and with one movement of pen cut the profitability down, and we are going to bury our branch and we will spend millions abroad. Well, this is the choice of Ukrainian officials under the guidance of Vasyl Shevchenko. In principle, okay, of course, the majority of enterprises have modern technologies, as a rule Western, because the money that the state channeled for the development of the branch for the last dozen years, they went where the officials wanted. We did not get modern technologies or components or technologies of rehabilitation, and there were hundreds of millions spent on this. And what, as far as the Ukrainian military are concerned, I think that here, yes, budgetary expenditure should be only for rehabilitation, and we do give prosthetics to our fighters from anti-terrorist operation zone, and the maximum cost was something like 500,000, taking into account the current exchange rate. And then when we take the cost of 1 million or 2 million, then the question is where the rest of the money goes, or why it goes abroad, and what does the disabled person have. And okay, and nowhere in the world do you find the situation when the state finances production. In Russia, for instance, the profitability is 30% and more, and you have it and you develop at the expense of this percentage, and you develop technologies yourself. You are required to survive, and you will develop something and work out on something. And when the budget money goes to some budget, so-called budget structures or the private structures, then you have the result. Any other questions? If there are no questions, then we'll round this off. Thank you for the presentation. We hope that both the state and the public society, civil society will come to terms and find the way out of this complicated situation. Our working day at the Ukraine Crisis Media Center is over. See you later.